to bring up a topic we've talked about before, and it has to do with race relations in our country. Had a little discussion on a forum I'm on about a soccer player overseas that used the N-word when referring to another player. And we had some disagreements and some good topic points were brought up. The discussion didn't get to go on because it's really not that type of forum, but the discussion is definitely not over. And this week we had new news of a part that I talked about. Does intent matter when talking about racism and use of the N-word and things of this nature? Does it matter if it's been heard, recorded, or can just somebody say they heard it, or I know this person feels a certain way? At what point do we draw the line that this is what it is and this is not what it is? And so I would go out on a limb, even though I don't know hardly anything about the soccer story, about the player. I can imagine that the soccer player that used the N-word was probably mad at the other soccer player, and that's why he had said it. Does it mean that he hates people that are black? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. People say a lot of things when they're mad. Doesn't matter what color they are. Things that they regret. Most things that you'll ever regret, you say, come out of anger. So I really don't know intent, but I would assume it was out of anger. Is he sorry? Probably. But then this week we have the story of this 15-year-old girl that makes a TikTok video. I believe it had to do with her getting her driver's permit. And she uses the N-word in her TikTok video, talking about, I got my permit, my N-word. Obviously, anybody with 2 cents of common sense knows that she wasn't saying that as a defamatory statement towards a race of people. She was using that as pop culture uses it to say my people. But it didn't matter. Some girl that probably hated her, had something against her, held it against her, held on to it for 3-4 years until she was accepted New York University to college, of which she has been removed from college and chastised publicly and by the media, and life pretty much destroyed. Her intent was not to harm anybody of any other color, ethnicity, race, gender, religion, whatever you want to say. It had nothing to do with that. But she said the word. Now, I would say that some people, black people, I would say, would be fine with that to some extent, some black people, because it doesn't affect them and because they've been harmed by that word, or that feeling, at least, that word implies. And since they've got a get out of jail free card and can use it at free will, because obviously it couldn't be because they hate that color, because they are that color, so it's used. And I had made a point that if somebody said, well, what would you do if you had what would you suggest? And personally, if I really didn't want it being used anymore, I wouldn't use it in pop culture. Everybody knows that kids follow pop culture. Everybody knows that kids repeat what they hear, repeat what they see. This is how we teach kids. So when their heroes and their idols are saying it every other sentence in their favorite song, when it's on the TV screen on their favorite TV program or their favorite movie, the tendency for them to repeat it will probably go up. I would think that would be common sense. So it's my belief that this word is used heavily in pop culture and in movie, television, to make sure the word stays relevant. Because there's never been another word than the N-word that has so much power over a people that with just the mere mention of that word you can get a man that's normally pretty reasonable to commit a felony just by hearing it. So it's a very good trigger word. So I believe it's kept relevant on purpose by pop culture. So that would be the first thing. If I don't want to hear the word, I would probably stop using the word. Maybe it wouldn't even exist anymore if we wouldn't have been using it for the last 20 years in pop culture and movies. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, we'll never know. But, so we get to the point to where this girl's, pretty much been set way back. And some people would say, good, I'm glad. I would say, when's it going to be your turn to suffer her consequences? So the same people that we're having this discussion with on a different forum that think that there's a systemic problem and something needs to be done, which usually when a system is broken, that means change, punishment. The system that we're talking about that's broken is, I would say, freedom of speech. Weaponizing speech against the people is a slippery slope. So the same people that have such a problem with this use of this word that's so heavily used in pop culture, I've also heard have very derogatory remarks about people who are gay. And let's face it, in most major religions around the world, gay is an unacceptable thing. So once we've started down this slope of outlawing certain types of speech, where does it stop? And it's my belief that it won't stop. I wish George Orwell's 1984 was mandatory reading at least twice during a child's education. Once at maybe middle age to beginning of high school, and once before leaving high school. Because if you've seen the movie and understand the Ministry of Truth and thought crimes, when you see that back in the 1950s, this man somehow could foresee screens telling us how to live, how to think, monitoring us, making sure we stay in check. He could see 70 years ahead of his time what's happening today. You go to a place and over the loudspeaker you're hearing socially distance, wear your mask for your safety and the safety of others. Just repeat. That repetition. And you see how they're using these tools against us. They want systematic change. I could get on board with if we were having an honest conversation about it. But we're not. We're having a conversation about making other people suffer because I felt some sort of way at some sort of time. The systems that keep the black man in America, or the black woman, and especially the black child down, are the same systems that the same people are voting for. That would be welfare, and that would be school choice. There's a reason why Democrats 100% are against school choice, when school choice would mean a better education and more possibility for success for minority and underprivileged children. How could anybody be against that? That's 100% racist policy designed systemically to make sure a race of people never gets ahead. And then they use pop culture and cancel culture in case one of them slips through the cracks and accidentally becomes successful through no help of the government, through merits, because they found their own way. They got to make sure they stay shut up. They got to make sure they're destroyed. So if we would have an honest conversation, I would be all game about it. But we're not. Instead, we make up lies about the other people being the racist, and then blame it on the people that want to bring change to all people, make them into the enemy to make sure change never happens. So like I said, that honest conversation has never happened on a large scheme. There are some people talking about it, but when you start bringing it up to most people, it's like touching the third rail. This one's electric. Because feelings, they drive feelings. Feelings are a more powerful motivator than anything else. Money, it doesn't matter. Emotion is the driver. If you're trying to brainwash a person, you have to fracture their soul pretty much. You have to traumatize them. If you traumatize a child, you can sculpt them into what you want. I don't really want to talk about the CIA business with it, but this is something that's been studied since before Hitler and implemented since the same time. So all of our entire lives, it's been experimented with, studied, and implemented. And they do it to this day. And we sit there and we feed into it, then we ask for more of it. So I see somebody that I've had disagreements with, somebody I really like, and they have a post this week to discuss somebody close to them getting a promotion, and the same exact job is probably the same exact job that has made this little girl who made a TikTok video as a 15-year-old is probably the same exact person that made sure that she's not going to get the education she worked for. They use us to harm each other, and we make each other our enemies so that nobody points the finger at them. I think back to my day in school, and we were playing games called Smear the Queer. That would be crazy to even think that would be something today. Things have changed. Things have never been, ever, more like, better for a minority or a gender or a sexual preference. Women, doesn't pick your cause. Things have never been better in this country. There's still countries that are throwing gays off the tops of buildings and killing them. That's still a thing in other parts of the world, but not in America. That's not what we do. So demonizing us when things have become better in a better environment makes no sense. It's like the whole COVID thing right now. Things are getting worse lockdown-wise when we have cures on the market and vaccines being administered. The news seems to get worse. It never had anything to do with it. They don't give a rat's ass if you get sick and die. They don't care if grandma dies. China's been looking at making these, what do you call them? Not cosmetic, but special viruses. When you think about a population, you think about, in a monetary value, having to take care of old people is a very expensive thing, and they're just non-producers. They serve their purpose, and now they're just a liability to a country, to a people. So they've been looking for these viruses for a long time and studying them. I remember listening to a documentary back in maybe, I don't know if it was 2001 or 2002, way back, maybe before or right after the first SARS outbreak. And it talked about the extensive work that China had been doing on this, finding things that attack the non-productive society, like a child or an old person, and leave the working age, healthy individuals that can do all the work and still make the communist government work. And so to think that a politician, an elite ruling class, gives a rat's ass about an old person or a healthy person or a person of color or a woman, that's just not true. That's naive and just not true. They care about what keeps them in power, and that's the only thing they care about. And acting like they're your friend or they're for you is insane. So now we're at this point where we're weaponizing words, and I cannot go back to enough. George Orwell, 1984. They've got it in audiobook form, 3 parts, about 3.5 hours per part. The movie's not as inclusive, doesn't have as much. I definitely recommend audiobook. I mean, you're not going to go through it in one shot, but it's definitely 100% worth your 12 hours of time to understand. You know, I tell it like this. I see something coming. I'm out here driving, and I notice it every single day. These drivers that only see 10 feet in front of their car. There's a blinking yellow arrow that says you're going to lose your right lane up there about 1.5 miles ahead. And somebody like me that sees that 1.5 miles ahead starts making preparation now to move over and to make sure I do not impede traffic. These other people wait until it's 10 feet in front of their face and say, oh gosh, I got to get over. And they jam themselves in over and cause a cluster, a backup, an accident, because they couldn't see far enough in the future. They couldn't see that extra 1.5 miles down the road. They couldn't see the 6 inches past their nose. And that's where we're at right now with this subject. Nobody, 99.9% of all Americans don't want to hold people back, don't want to hurt people because of race, color, gender, whatever. But the boogeyman is a good motivator. The scary guy that you can't put your hands on, but just saying he exists is a good motivator. It's a good control factor. And it ain't got nothing to do with making your life better. Punishing that girl will make no person's life better. Not one person in this world will benefit except for that person that got that job to punish people that aren't of color for their insensitivities, even if they were 3 years or 4 years before they made it to college. And when I see that job, we might as well call that the ministry of truth. Punishing thought crime. The redefining of language. Going into the Webster's Dictionary and changing the meaning of names. I mean, it's all in black and white for somebody that sees 1.5 miles down the road. For that person that just sees 6 inches or less in front of them, right now you're just in the way. You're an obstacle. You're not part of the solution. So I don't know. I hope, my hope is that more people will read the book to start with. But think, wait a minute here. Well, what am I looking for? To have my feelings fluffed? To have my feelings validated? Or to actually solve problems? Because I would say if you're for this systematic change of America, because the N-word was used 4,000, 6,000 miles away in the heat of battle in a soccer match, that you are part of the problem. Doesn't mean you want ill will towards somebody, but you're not being honest with yourself. And if a word is all right for one man to say, it's all right for all men to say, and women. So if you want to outlaw a word, outlaw it. I'm all for it. I hate the word. My old buddy used to say it. He'd say it to his kid. And it made me cringe every time. And it's like, man, what are you teaching this kid? It's, don't do it. Don't do it. I could explain to you the boogeyman syndrome in America, where the black man and black woman has a hard time getting up and making it, you know, legally and legitimately. When my African friends from Nigeria, Liberia, Cameroon could come over here not knowing the culture, not speaking the language very well, and still having that pigment issue, and they can come over here with nothing and fight and educate themselves, apply for jobs, get promoted, get retirement, raise children, live the American dream and succeed first try. And our multi-generational population of blacks have a harder time doing it. There's another issue at play here. And the answer to that is I've watched them mentor their young. I've watched them mentor the boys of the club. I've watched them make sure that even if the father wasn't in the picture, there was another successful male role model in the picture helping to steer that child in the right direction, showing him the way to succeed instead of telling him how he wasn't going to be able to succeed. And most of that was going to be based on a boogeyman and the color of his skin. Because telling a child they can't win, you couldn't find a worse thing to tell a child. You should always encourage a child to put their best out. Expect the best and you'll get better. Expect nothing, you'll get nothing. So I just wanted to finish up that conversation. It's been eating a hole in my heart because it's hard to express your ideas and your opinions in an emotionally charged conversation, especially without interruption. Because I mean, everybody doesn't hear all the words at once or in totality. Some people choose and pick certain points to just stop the conversation. Is this even a conversation that needs to be had? Can we just go live and be free and be happy? We're never going to get everybody to like everybody. Especially not by legislating feelings and legislating love and punishing anything out of what they deem appropriate. I mean, take speeding tickets. How many of you speed? How many of you have ever broke the speed limit? Even though you know there's a punishment for it, you shouldn't do it, and it can be dangerous. Every one of you speeds. At some point in your life, you have broke the limit, crossed their threshold, and faced punishment, or maybe not. Maybe you've never got the ticket. I've got the ticket. I've paid the price, and I've still done it. And I'm going to do it again. So I hope we can just be reasonable as people, continue treating people like we want to be treated ourselves. Because to tell you the truth, that's the only way this thing's going to ever win. You'll never, ever beat a man into submission and gain his love. You might gain his submission, but you're not going to gain his love, not true love. So, like I said, it depends on if you're into punishing people. And like me, I'm a fat guy, right? And so when I go in place, I think, oh, they're looking at me because I'm fat. Oh, they don't like me because I'm fat. Oh, they don't blah, blah, blah. But you know what it really is? It's my hatred towards myself for being fat. And sometimes I wonder if that's not part of the problem with Black America, is that they feel that everybody's thinking a certain thing because they think it themselves. If they didn't hate being born black, or they didn't have some type of feeling about being born the way they were born, then maybe they wouldn't see it as much of a problem. Being heavy bothers me. And I think that people are, and maybe people are thinking things, but it's not what they're thinking is what bothers me. It's my feelings about myself, about what it is. And whether you can help that or not is irrelevant to the feeling. And, you know, feelings hurt. But is that your problem that I'm fat? Is that your problem that I'm heavy? Is that your problem that I feel a certain way about being heavy? Or that I don't look good in my shirt? Or whatever? Or my butt crack hangs out? Is that your problem? And I would say, no, it's not. It's my problem. And I have to be okay with who I am. And until I'm okay with who I am, maybe I'll always have those feelings. So some of these things are our problem, and we need to make sure that we don't put our problem project our problem onto the rest of the world, because you want the rest of the world to feel miserable, or at least validate your feeling about yourself. So stay positive, stay up, treat each other good, love one another, and if somebody gets in your way and you can't move it, by God, don't be afraid to stand up and say, hey, get the hell out of the way. Well, you're wrong. Don't look for somebody else to do what you need to do. That guy, thousands of miles, the soccer player that said the N-word, don't look for FIFA or MLS or Premier League or the president, or don't look for some of them to fix the problem that if you're standing right next to. I mean, how about the locker room? That problem could be solved in the locker room. If I'm the referee in that game and I hear that word, I'm going to give you the red card, throw you out. If you love soccer and you want to get back in the game, you're going to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. If it can in the locker room, talk. Why did you say that? Don't say that. Tell them, don't say that. If I hear you say it again, I'm going to whip your ass. You know, I mean, deal with it. Don't look for the systemic change, the forced feelings. Just don't do that. Read 1984 before you try to disagree with anything I've said. Because like I said, if you can't see a mile and a half down the road, then we're not even having a conversation. Love you all. Peace out.